Okay, KV Krishna, can we start?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so basically, the first question which I have to ask is, can you just share your experience about how you got your entire Stanford experience? Because that's the best possible dream of many people out there. So, could you just give your views as to how you got your Stanford internship and how that actually happened?
Okay, so the first thing to consider here is that once we are in college, most of us are always on a hype and we are in an urge to secure a good internship at the end of second year, at the end of third year, in an attempt to build our resume, gain experiences and stuff. So what most people start doing is they start sending, in case you're interested for a research internship, you start sending out mails to professors early in third year, right? But in many cases, it so happens that you do not get a positive response. That could be due to many factors, depending on the way you write your email, or because maybe there will really not be a vacant position in the lab for the prof to offer you something. So I basically got this through a cold mail, which eventually ended up being a part of a program, what is called the Stanford. Uh, just a second.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the thing is, this started out as a cold mail, and which eventually got converted into a program. Now, what many people miss out on is we do not know of many programs. We know of the popular ones like DART, MyTax, Charpak, Viterbi, SNBOS. We know of these popular programs, and most programs require you to be in a certain top 5, top 10 within your department for you to really be considered for the program. But there are also many other programs which are individual to each institute or each university or each department per se. And we do not really know of these. So the only key to this is to keep browsing through departments and web pages and to shoot out cold mails at random to try a chance, to try a luck.
Okay. So, can you just tell us about the Stanford experience as such? Like, how was it in general?
Okay, so well, I mean, for me personally, that was the first time I got my hands working on few experiments. So that's when I really got my interest in experimental research, and so that's a great experience. The major difference I find between uh, leading labs in India or leading labs abroad would be probably uh, how independent or the liberty that you get within a lab to do what you want. So in most cases, I find that an advisor outside would give you freedom to choose your problem, to do whatever you want on that problem, will give you freedom to work, use the apparatus to your will, and not really care about what the outcome is, but just to try to see if we are able to get some outcome out of it. It may be a failure, but that's research. You cannot really get a positive result always, but and a failure itself is a result in a research experiment because it tells you that's one way to not do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you spoke about cold mailing, right? So just give us all a set of tips as to how to actually cold mail in the best way possible, so that we can get the best returns or reach our dream colleges slash internships for research in the next coming summer.
Okay. So I've gotten a chance to actually review many of the emails in the last 1.5 years or so, and one thing that I find common in most initial drafts is that people tend to try writing very generic emails. So, for example, a candidate would just write telling that I'm in such and such year in such and such department, and I'm willing to work in this field. Let's say, for example, people would just state machine learning, or people would just state nanotechnology, which is a broad realm in itself. So, uh, advisors are generally looking for students who want to work on something very specific, something which is very relevant to what they have funding for, something which is very relevant to a project that they are currently pursuing. So, this is one thing that people need to take care of. You need to state explicitly in your email what exactly are you seeking for. And these emails, it's a great idea to actually start off with writing the professor's name, so it feels a little personal, and maybe include a link to an article of the professor that you liked, or maybe his website, which shows that you've actually done some background work in seeing that you're actually interested in working with the professor. So writing a personal email is one best thing that you can do. And another thing to write a cold mail would be to now many times it so happens that faculties try to keep receiving these emails every day, almost every day, from thousands of people. So to be fair, they say no to everyone. Now to stand out among that pool, you need to keep writing the same email again and again, keep reminding them, keep showing them that you're desperate for it, that you're really interested for it. So as long as you're pursuing it continuously, then there may be a point when the faculty takes note of your application, and then you may take it further.
Okay, and I remember talking to you before as well about the internship applications, and you told it's extremely important to even pick the right professor. So, could you give some tips as to how you actually find and narrow down on the right professor, not just in the field, but also whom you should approach to get the best benefit out of the whole internship?
Okay, so now there are two important things. I think most of us who try to do a research internship, it's in view of trying to pursue graduate studies, right? So there are two ways to view this. One is that a research internship in itself is not good enough research experience for you to be qualified enough to pursue graduate research. Right, that's point number one. But point number two is also that this research from a different exposure, a different environment, a new advisor will be able to comment on how well you were able to gel into that environment in the given short frame. And in the given short frame, how did your thinking proceed and what was your progress within the short frame? And how could that be scaled up or extrapolated to the long-term research that you would pursue? So these are two ways in which you view it. And given these considerations, I think it's important for you to first look at different professors' websites. Most of them actually have this section on their website called opportunities or lab openings and stuff, where they're looking for students. So if that is the case, you mail with your CV, there's a good chance that you'll be considered. But if that is not the case, you want to look for someone probably with less number of people in their lab, because they'll be able to devote more personal time to you. And when they are able to devote more personal time to you, the recommendation that they are going to give you is going to be more strong because they have more personal anecdotes to refer to in the recommendation. So that would seem more realistic and not very generic. And of course, more specifically, you want to try and find a professor who is not, just pushing for publications as such, but trying to give you quality research experience and learning experience that you're seeking for.
And now to actually talk about the upcoming placement and internship season. So for us as such, we will be having it completely online. So could you also give some tips on as to how to write resume as well as possible, and how exactly to maximize the chances of making it more visible and more noteworthy?
Okay. Uh, I may not be the right person to comment on resumes for job applications, but otherwise I will make some general remarks on resume writing. Uh, Primarily, you could write a resume using MS Word or LaTeX, but it's preferred that you write it using LaTeX because it gives a different feel altogether, and somehow it's more appreciated. But that being said, it does not mean that you write a resume in MS Word and that's going to hurt you. That's not the case, but of course, it's preferred to have in LaTeX. That's point number one. Point number two would be to try and include very crisp information within your resume. For example, uh, at least in our college, or so to say, many colleges within India, at least, students try to take up many different projects, very small projects, which do not have very significant end goals or end results. Now, enlisting all of these on your resume is just going to seem like a desperate attempt for you to convey everything that you've done, although it's not really important. So it is a good idea to have only those projects that have actually gotten significant, conclusion results. Something that you may not really publish, but some understanding, something that is a progress in the field, or at least something that's a progress in your understanding of the field itself. Now, you want to mention such projects and experiences, just write one or two brief sentences about them, highlight your skills, like say different software skills or any experimental skills that you have, maybe a line on soft skills if you're applying for jobs and stuff. And when it comes to, let's say, these professional activities, like you being a part of different clubs and things, it doesn't make much sense to me to write different things that you've done as part of the club. You can just write a line about it, tell that you're a member, or mention your post within the club, and just write a phrase about what your contribution is. That should be the best thing to do. Chandran, are you on the call? Chandran?
Yeah.
Hey, hi. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So,
Uh,
apart from that, what other ways are there to actually, what are the the largest challenge for most people? So, how would you say is the most important thing which has to be there, and what is the like classic challenges for most people?
Sorry, no, I'm not able to hear you. There's a cut in the voice. Sorry, you're not audible. Hello. Sorry, I couldn't hear you back then. There was a lag in the voice.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
It's lagging. It's lagging. You're audible, but it's lagging.
Okay, yeah. So basically, now am I audible?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. The question which I had is, what are the like if you had to say three things which
Three things which? Sorry, there's a hang again.
okay, yeah. What
What
are
are the
the
three things?
definite things which must be there in a resume? Three things if you had to tell someone to definitely add in the resume, what would be there in a resume if you had to tell as
Okay,
such?
one definitely has to be your educational qualification. That is what degree you're pursuing, right? But I would suggest people to try and refrain from adding a CGPA if it's definitely not one in the top five, because uh, you do not want someone to judge your resume based on that grades alone. Of course, if you're in the top five, if you have a very good CGPA, then it adds. But otherwise, I would recommend not to add it. Then should definitely be a experience, if you have any, if you have worked in any company, if you worked in any lab, done any research internships or corporate internships, add those internships, write what your specific contribution is, what difference did you make in those 2 or 3 months. That should definitely be there. And then you should definitely write some skills which the employer is looking for, and which you are really proficient in, which should be made known to the employer.
Okay. What are your what's your general experience for applications abroad when applying?
Okay, this is a very subjective question, actually. It depends. I think when you talk about graduate studies, the first question you want to ask yourself is why graduate studies? What do you want to do with the graduate study, or what do you want to do during the course of graduate study? Now, that being said, there are many different options. You could pursue a master's in science, which could be based on research, or which could just be based on coursework. You could do something in business. You could do something in design, product design. There are many different interdisciplinary programs out there. You could I mean, people from chemistry or biology could change fields and go to let's say medicine. There are different options out there, but so the first question you want to ask yourself is why graduate studies in the first place. Now, if the answer to that question is, let's say, because my friends are doing it, looks like there's more scope, then I think there's a lot more of introspection and research that you want to do before trying to answer the question again. You shouldn't proceed blindly to pursue graduate studies. But if your answer is something of the sort, let's say, there are certain number of N fields that I feel interested in, and I really don't know much about these already. And knowing a little more about these and getting exposure with these set of people in this field is going to improve my knowledge and improve my skills or my employability as such. Then you should definitely go for graduate studies. Now, the second question you would want to ask is, if I should go for graduate studies, uh, is it going to be because I want to, land a career in the industry, corporate world, or do I want to land a career in a research setting, which could be academia, national labs, or just R&D, private R&D institutions, things of these kind. And if your answer is, let's say, you want to go into the corporate world, then there are many programs that are specifically tailored. There could be, let's say, 1 year or 1.5 year programs that are specifically tailored with courseworks and project works, so that you are fit for the industry with the skills that employers are currently looking for. That may be a good fit. But on the other hand, if you're still not sure of what to do, if you're not sure if you really like research, then maybe you should try for a master's with research, so that you get some research experience as well. And if you happen to like that, you will still be in a position to pursue a career in research. That being said, it does not mean that if you do a coursework master's, you are not eligible to pursue research. That's not the case. But a master's with research experience is definitely more valued than one without. On the other hand, there are programs which allow you entry into the direct doctorate programs. So now, in most institutions, it would be the case that you apply to the school. You are pooled among a set of people, all the candidates, and they pick out the best ones from the pool, and they are offered admission. And then you get, let's say, 6 months or a year time to choose whom do you want to work with, and then proceed. But there are also some universities where the advisor has to first pick you, and you are committed to the advisor. You have no other choice to move on. So this is something a candidate has to check out beforehand, see how things work in a certain university if it's for a PhD, and if they really want to proceed with that advisor.
Okay. So this is the next question which I had to ask is more with respect to the current times as such. So any further tips or suggestions of what people should do right now in this entire COVID pandemic, assuming that the lockdown is still in place and no one can actually perform? What are the best things that people could do to maximize their chances or increase their chances of having a good application or resume at the end of when they are applying next year or next year?
Okay. Now, COVID-19 has caused scenarios that would want to make you question your choice of graduate studies in the first place. And if not as much about the choice of graduate studies itself, at least about where you want to pursue it. Because immigration restrictions could be a scenario in many countries. Let's say, given a case that the number of cases of COVID-19 skyrocket in the coming times, and it becomes the case that Indians are not allowed anywhere, then you may be in a fix as to where you want to go. That is one point to consider. Now, a second point would be what is the scenario within India itself? I mean, if you read about the recent investment by Google in India, if you're reading about recent investments by many corporate giants across the world in Indian companies and Indian R&D, it is good hope that in the next 5 years, or at least the coming decade, the number of job opportunities are going to shoot up rapidly within India, and at a pay scale that is really sufficient enough for one to remain good, for one to live comfortably. Now, again, all of these are personal matters and personal figures, but that's not something I want to comment on. But I want to make known that there are good master's programs even within India. But okay, let's say for people who are very sure of going for a job, people very sure of having a certain post or a certain financial target in their mind, it's a great idea for them to go abroad to pursue a master's, purely because of the purchasing power parity and purely because of the I wouldn't say ease of getting a job, but purely because of the network you would build to get a good job. Right. Then you should definitely go out. And you want to weigh your options based on your return of investment, based on which university you're going to, which program you're applying to, what is the alumni base there, and how do you stand among the competitive set of applicants. It depends on those. But if you're someone who is interested in pursuing research, if you're someone who has a vision of PhD in mind, then you would want to probably consider a master's within India, because it saves you the money you spend on a master's, and while it also gives you the same comparable skill set, comparable experiences, and comparable research outcomes. For example, IITs, some labs in IIT, some lab in IISc, some labs in other DST institutions such as JNCSR or NCBI and TIFR. There are many labs out there who have very good master's programs. And if you're interested in pursuing research, these are definitely options you want to consider. Because they have a good track record of sending out students to very good universities for PhD, and they have a good alumni base. So there's a good chance that you will be one among them.
Okay, and now the one of the most important questions and the final question as such. How do you pick the right universities if you're applying abroad? Like, how do you know exactly which to pick and which to apply for? How do you gauge your level of getting selected? Can you give some tips based on that?
Okay. Now, again, any question that I have to answer with respect to graduate studies starts with why do you want to do it? So, if you're looking for a job as such, it might be slightly easier for you to get a job if you were in a university which is very close to industries, or which has close collaboration with industries, or let's say your master's thesis advisor has close collaboration with industries. So if there is some sort of connection, it definitely helps. And it's a known fact that most employment contracts work based on referrals. So if you know someone, if you have an alumni of your institution or elsewhere who knows you to some extent and is able to refer you for a position, you stand a higher chances of your resume being reviewed and you being called for an interview. Now, on another case, if I will stick my remark more towards this, in case of research, how do you pick a good graduate school and lab? Now, what most of us tend to do is we tend to go with the rankings as such. Let's say QS rankings or US News rankings or Times Higher Education. We look at these rankings and we decide what universities may be good. But that's not really the case. In many cases, it will be so that some of the leading people within that field, some of the people who are doing contemporary and the latest work, pioneering work in a certain field, are not in one of the top ranked universities. In most cases, it is that way. So you want to closely look at the university websites. You want to closely look at the profiles of each of the professors, look at their papers, and then you want to decide on if or not they are a good fit for you. And another important thing is what kind of research setting you're looking for. For example, let's say if you were to work in the lab of Robert Langer, it's by far the best biomedical engineering lab in the world. It's the largest, but it has hundreds of researchers, so many postdoc people, and so many graduate students. So the individual attention you would get from the advisor is almost negligible. On the other hand, if you're looking for someone who's, say, just starting out their career, there is two advantages here. One is they are self-motivated because they want to get a tenure, so they are interested in pushing for research, so they will do work and they will make you do work. And the second thing is, since they are just starting out and the group is very small, you will get good individual attention and you will be able to grow well. So it depends on what you're seeking for. If you're really seeking for a job after a PhD, then a large lab may be very good because the tag will take you places. But if you are really looking for, upskilling yourself and trying to find your niche within the research domain, then you probably want to look at smaller groups.
Okay. Finally, any last thoughts, tips to just conclude it before we go into the questions which came on the live chat?
Um, well, actually, there are a lot of things. I would say a lot of myths when it comes to graduate studies. Things like, okay, the most important thing I would say is, for example, people trying really hard for a research internship abroad with really or no experience within their country or within their university. Uh, a student who has worked, let's say, for 1.5 years or 2 years within their university or within a local university with a certain professor on a project continuously for these 2 years and is able to get a paid paper or a patent, and even if not these, has just worked on something and given direction to a project. Now, this is much, much more valued than an experience of just 3 months because research just does not happen in such a short period of time. So I think people should really focus on, building their expertise continuously and not just with discrete experiences. It should be a continuous building of expertise. And another thing is cold mailing is, of course, an option if you want to get to places, but that's not by far the best of options because what happens is when you apply and get an internship program or you're awarded a scholarship or a fellowship, anything of that sort, it gives the graduation application review committee a hope that you have already been pooled against competitive people and you have stood out against them already. So there is one more extra reason for them to believe that you are good and they can trust in you once again. So if you are able to get into a program of any sort, that is certainly going to be more valued than a cold mail venture. And another thing I would say is probably to do with publications. So most people tend to push for just local conference publications or terrible journal publications. Many papers that I've read in low-class journals do not even have proper grammar. No, that's not the case you want to do for building a profile. It doesn't matter if you do not have a publication at all, but it shouldn't be a something which is a very low standard so that you seem desperate to have gotten it. That shouldn't be the case. It's perfectly okay to not have one. That will not affect your admission, but if you have a quality one, it definitely gives you an edge. Few more myths, if I were to say, it has to do with CGPA actually. So, well, I mean, it is a concern that many universities, at least in the US, really care for your CGPA, particularly if you're applying for doctoral programs. For masters, it may not be a great deal as such, but for doctoral, definitely. That being said, if you have a research profile, which is outstanding and outweighing your apparently lower GPA and GRE, then that's still fine. But otherwise, it's a good idea for students to try and maintain something above 9. It definitely helps.
Now I'll move on to the questions. So the first question is by Salman Shah. Hi Salman, thanks for joining us. So he asked about the same thing about GPA cutoffs for universities while applying. So is there any other thought as such which you have when it comes to application?
Okay. Now, when you look at, say, the top universities, now by top universities, of course, you have Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, Cambridge, Oxford, Caltech, uh, Princeton, or that CMU, and maybe what else am I missing on? Yeah, that's about it. So these are definitely up there. But now, what most of these universities seek for is candidates that they can really trust in. So if there is, you know, a small doubt, a small sense of doubt uh, on the candidate's credentials or ability or academic strengths, then the student will definitely not get the benefit of doubt. The application is going to be rejected. In if you come down one tier and then you look at universities, then it's going to be a good way between your GPA, GRE, and letters as such. I would say for any graduate program, the most important thing is your letters and your grades. But uh, yes, it definitely hurts to have a low GPA if you're aiming for one of these top universities. But otherwise, if you're applying to places in Singapore and Europe, CGPA shouldn't be a great concern, at least for master's programs, um, because your statement would be more valued, is what I think from my experiences.
Okay. Then second question by Chandravaran Kunjeti. Hi Chandravaran. So his question is about how should we actually build a good combination of both CGPA and projects on our resume for higher studies. So like where do we maintain the balance, or how exactly do we do that? Is the question which he has asked.
Okay. So again, as I said, it depends on where you're applying and what is the graduate program you're applying to. If it's for if it is for some new interdisciplinary program, or a program that is focused on preparing you for the industry, I don't think CGPA would be given the most importance. That might be let go of for better credentials, better skills, better projects. But if you're looking at research settings, then I think you need a good balance between both. And what do I mean by good balance is, uh, let's say, I mean, if you have sixes and sevens on your transcript, that's definitely a bad thing to have when you're applying for research programs. But if you are, above the 8.5 cutoff or above the 9 cutoff, you definitely stand a good chance. And as far as projects are concerned, it doesn't matter if you've done 4 projects that mean nothing and you have an 8.5 CGPA. I don't think that matters at all. But let's say a candidate who has above 9.3, 9.4 CGPA of that kind and just has one quality project which he has done over 2 to 2.5 years period and is in the process of writing a paper out of it, then this candidate definitely stands a very good chance of getting into a program.
Okay.
So,
The next.
to concisely put it, I think people should focus on getting at least one project which is, completed with good sincerity, completed to a good extent, and not just focus on getting, scrap projects, many of such, and try to balance it with an average GPA. No, that is not going to work out.
Okay. The next question, as such, was by it was asked by Udsh Dhruday. He asked about whether or not being a citizen from a foreign country helps in getting an internship or masters in that country.
Uh, it depends. It depends on which country and which program again. But of course, I mean, you will certainly have some edge over international applicants if you're from the same country. But that's not the primary concern. But I mean, these citizenship constraints definitely come into picture if you're looking at the fellowships and scholarships as such, because most renowned fellowships require that you have pursued your undergraduate degree in that country or some sort of PR status or citizenship status. But I mean, there are still many of these external fellowships that you can apply to. That's one thing people don't really focus on. Thanks for bringing up that point. So when it comes to external fellowships, here's the thing. It's really hard to figure out what these external fellowships are. So one thing that I figured is that when you go to each university and go through their brochures and different segments as part of the graduate studies, that you'll find a particular tab called fellowships. And you go there, in most universities have listed a set of external fellowships that you can apply to, and it's a good idea to check out each of these to figure out if you are eligible to apply to any of these, and you should definitely apply. And having applied to a fellowship before submitting a graduate application helps a lot, because it gives them hope that you think you're competitive for that fellowship as well. And if you get a fellowship, the department is happy to have fellowship students rather than students who want to pay by themselves, or the department pay them. It's a very good idea to have external fellowships.
Okay. Then the next question has been by Moto. Good name, by the way. So, do the number of projects done on your own rather than under a professor actually count? Do independent projects count as such?
Well, it depends on what the outcome of the project is, I would say. If you did a certain project and completed it with good results, try to spin off a startup out of it, or write a good paper, or get a patent out of it, then it's definitely a great idea. And in such cases, if you're worked alone, I think the best idea would be to make a prof fully aware of what and how you've done it, and ask him to write a recommendation in favor of the work you've done. So that will work out positively in your favor in both ways. But otherwise, if it's not something which is as significant, it's a good idea to always work under a professor for a long time, because they will be able to specifically tell, this is how this candidate faced a certain problem, and this is how he or she took it front. This is how they address a particular challenge. So these personal anecdotes mean a lot when you're applying to research programs, particularly. Not just research programs, even if you're applying for MBA programs, or let's say some leadership-based programs, then recommendations matter a lot. So someone who is sort of established in the field, an academician, if he or she is able to state good things about you and why they think it is good, then that's the best way to have it.
Okay. Then Atideep Bharadwaj has asked the next question about, is it possible to land a master's seat with a couple of projects and an 8-point CGPA, like around 8.2-ish?
Well, again, all of these are very subjective questions. Now, it depends on what kind of projects the person has done. Uh, Again, as I said, if you've done projects that really have no outcome, that are just there, you've just used the commercial software, you've ran a simulation or something, or you've written a snippet of code that already exists out there and you just did it for yourself again, these really do not matter at all. But on the other hand, let's say you don't even need to have 5 projects, you have 1 or 2 real quality projects, which could form a part of a potential paper or a patent, then that is definitely going to be valued. And for master's program, 8.2 CGPA really shouldn't hurt. Maybe it may not fetch you an admit in, say, MIT, Stanford, and Berkeley, but you will definitely get into a good institution if your projects and recommendations are strong.
Okay. Then there's one more question by Atideep, which we'll ask before that. He has asked about whether and being from an NIT or IIT actually helps, because he says that getting a good CGPA from an NIT or IIT is much harder than those in a local college. So do these colleges do proper distinguishing between these colleges as such?
I'd like to start off by telling no. I don't think universities pay attention to any of these, in sense that they do not really care for how hard is it for you to get a CGPA in that university. No, that's not the concern. Tag, well, the tag of the university matters in sense that what are the opportunities available there and how well you've availed it. For example, the research opportunities, the research infrastructure present there, the clubs, how well you've actively participated in things of this kind, do matter to some extent. But let's say if I were to rate it out of 10, I probably rate it 3 or 4 out of 10. The importance of you being from a certain university. That just having an IIT or NIT tag is not going to get you an admit. It depends on your overall profile.
Okay. Then Nisarg Shah has asked the next question. Hi, Nisarg. So, is it possible to switch fields completely while going to masters, and is it advisable to go for masters in a completely new field if one wishes to join corporate slash non-research fields?
Okay, that's a brilliant question, actually. Now, there are there are things that you want to consider. I think Nisarg has mentioned explicitly of a master's in a different field, right? So master's is being the keyword here. It's a very good idea, and it is definitely possible to completely switch to another field for your master's program. Why so is because, let's say, through your undergrad days, you have gained significant experience in a certain domain. And now you think that culminating this with another set of skills and expertise, together, the fusion of these is going to lead to something more impactful. And if you think that is the case, it's a very good idea to shift fields. For example, someone from any of the core branches may be willing to pursue a master's in one of the computing sciences. Now, it is a good field. For example, let's say I'm giving a very trivial example. This is not to be taken for complete account, but just to state an example, someone with a background in mechanical or atmospheric sciences could take up masters in computing sciences, and then the culmination of these will lead to very interesting problems that you want to work on in the field of planetary motion, in the field of atmospheric airflow, the climate dynamics, ocean dynamics, and things. So it's a very good idea to switch fields. And what are the things you need to switch fields when it comes to an application is, if you have shown good expertise within your own field, within your own undergrad domain, and tell explicitly in your statement that this is why I want to do something new. And if your recommenders are telling that you are good with learning things on the fly, then these three put together will definitely fetch you a good admit in a different field.
Okay. Okay. So the next question by Drishika Nadla. So she really enjoyed your talk. And after that, she has also asked if you could comment about how you got a SEM off and how did you finish the required courses and how did you get a semester long internship at IISc?
Okay. So semester off is not a big deal as such, because luckily for us in our college, most departments allowed to take a sem off. But that would mean that you need to complete the required credits before or after somehow for you to graduate in time. So it's up to you to distribute the workload. Let's say you'll have to complete 3 to 4 extra courses distributed over many semesters that you would have otherwise completed in the semester that you're taking an off in. So if you're able to pull that off, I think it's a very trivial process of you to write a letter to the HOD and the Dean Academic, and they'll pass it through. It shouldn't be a big concern.
Okay. Then the next question has been asked by, again, Moto. He has asked about whether low CGPA decreases your chances of a master's even if you have a good research profile.
Well, that depends on the university you're applying to. Let's say a candidate has one solid research paper, okay, one solid journal paper, one solid patent, and good professional experience as such. Maybe like try to come up with a startup idea, or worked in a couple of industries and gain some experiences, and is somewhere around say 7.5 to 8.2 in this range. Then I think it would still be hard for such a candidate to pass through the filtration criteria in one of the top schools like MIT or Stanford or Cambridge. It might be really hard yet, because given that though all of these are strong in the candidate's favor, the university still has a doubt in the academic credentials of the student, because they have not really performed well. I wouldn't say they have not performed well, but I mean, our system is such that the grades do not define your understanding of a subject. But yeah, unfortunately, that's how it is. So yes, it does hinder your chances if you're looking at one of the top 5, but top 20, top 30, you definitely have a good chance of getting in.
Okay. And next question is by Chandan Kumar. So he has asked a general question about how exactly to send cold messages for research internships.
Um, yeah, the only way is to make a personal mail, draft a personal mail, take a thorough look at the advisors that you want to work with, check out their recent papers, and just keep writing reminders again and again until you get some sort of response from them. In many cases, I've known where an initial negative response is turned out to be positive later because they got a funding later. So the only key there is to keep pursuing, keep writing to them again and again, keep writing to as many as you want, uh, and try to make it as personal as possible.
Okay. So the next two questions are both related to MBA by Rahul Harikumar and Saurabh Mukashi. So the
Mhm.
first by Rahul Harikumar has asked what are the requirements of an MBA program while applying abroad, and Saurabh Mukashi is also pretty similar. He has also asked about if you want to switch to an MBA program completely different from undergrad and in a foreign country, what would be the suggested course of action? So in general, MBA abroad thoughts.
I'm not sure what they mean by MBA program completely changed from undergrad field. I don't know what that means, but as such for MBA, that's not something I've really searched a lot about. But I do know that GMAT or GRE is a requirement, one of the test score requirements. And what do business schools look for? Like most other schools, I'm pretty sure that they look for relevant work experience. Let's say you are looking for an MBA in strategy planning or business management or let's say entrepreneurship, anything particular. So here, your statements would matter a lot, explaining why specifically that MBA and what do you plan to do with that degree. Why will that degree help you, and what will how will you contribute to that incoming class of cohort, and what is that specific diversity that you bring in, and yeah, that's about it. So why will you be a good addition to it, and why will that program be a good addition for you on your resume is what you want to look answer for yourself and the university.
Okay. Then Moto has again asked a question whether or not you should actually try to do a project just related to your field, or can you do it interdisciplinary with respect to multiple branches, and would that actually help in getting into the corporate sector later on for work as such?
Okay, that's a good question. It is a good idea to gain some experience in an interdisciplinary setting because point number one, it gives you exposure to those different fields, and you may come across fields that you otherwise didn't know existed. You may develop new interests, you may gain more ideas and exposure as such. That's a major point. And another point, trying to address it from the perspective of admissions, if you are applying to a graduate program which is interdisciplinary in nature, uh, it doesn't matter that you've worked in an interdisciplinary setting before. Of course, it will give you some edge, but it's fine to not have worked before. What you want to convey to the committee in such cases through your statement is uh, why is your particular skill set needed for that interdisciplinary idea, and what extra things that is that you are seeking from this interdisciplinary setting, and how will this fusion go on to create new avenues and new opportunities for yourselves and for people who are trailing your path.
Okay. So that is the end of all the questions which have come on the live as such. And I have a final question to actually wrap the whole procedure up, because this is something which came up repeatedly throughout this entire discussion, which is about actually it's extremely dependent and subjective on the area of interest or field which you choose. So even for our younger audience, or even for people within my own batch, what would you suggest is the best way to actually discover what your area of interest is and how to actually pursue it? How do you find that spark of, okay, I'm interested in this particular field, I want to take it forward, or okay, I'm not interested in this and I shouldn't go into that? How do you do that?
Okay. Honestly speaking, I'm not the best person to answer this because I personally try to. I don't try to, but I tend to have many different interests. Like I find myself interested in most things that I place my hands on. But when it comes to finding a figure or figuring out your field of interest, the best thing that can happen to you is to figure out what you do not want to do. Right. Let's say you did something and you figure out you do not want to do that. You've already eliminated an option from your data set. Uh, so the only way you can figure this out, I'm talking in terms of research. I'm not very sure about the corporate sector, but talking in terms of research or talking about domains that you want to work on, the only thing to do is to pick up elementary projects, read up a lot about these fields, look at what are the recent developments, read the recent papers, look at leading labs in the world and what they are working on in this field and why they are doing it. Try to answer such questions for yourself, and, and try to imagine yourself in a situation where you're working on this, like maybe try working on it for a week or so. um, and if you really do not like it, then you know that you do not want to pursue it. But if you're finding some light out there telling that okay, this could be something I'm interested in, try to delve a little deeper. Yeah, I mean it's a vicious cycle. There's no particular thing to get this done. But one thing most graduate programs allow you to do is, I mean, most graduate programs recently are designed this way. They understand that it's hard to figure out one particular interest early during our undergrad days, and they give you an opportunity to just be admitted to the department and then try out different options and choose what best fits your interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it. There aren't any more questions. Oh yeah, there is one more question again, which has been asked by Moto.
Okay.
Do research internships at institutes lower than NITK matter even if the projects are good compared to bad ones in better colleges? Do they affect my chances of a master's?
Uh, okay, for masters. Okay. Now, actually, this answer varies a lot for masters and PhD programs. Uh, when you're talking about a certain project or a research, prospect, it it really does not matter where you're doing it, with whom you're doing it. None of these matter. All that matters is that what is the outcome of that project? What was your contribution to it? Okay. Now, if this is a certain project that you've worked on for a significant time, and it is leading to something good, like some progress within the field, which is known and appreciated by the fraternity, by the peer review people, then that definitely helps you a lot. But yeah, I think that's what he means by a good project. Yeah, that's what it means.
Okay. And another question has just come up by Shashank, wherein he is asked if there are many universities out there for getting a master's degree from a science discipline, then how do you choose the right one?
By science, does he or she mean pure sciences like elementary physics, theoretical physics, chemistry, and stuff?
Yeah, Shashank, can you just clarify on that? Do you mean pure sciences or do you mean normal MS? Okay, there hasn't been a response so far.
Okay,
So,
that's okay. So I
yeah.
try to answer it in both ways. So I understand that the confusion here is to identify if it's a good idea to pursue a master's in science fields as such, right? So if you were to shift to pure sciences, uh, it may be a little hard for you to enter the corporate sector later on. It's a little hard. It's not impossible. It's not very hard either, but it's slightly harder compared to what an engineer would, or a business executive would have experienced. But having said that, if someone is looking for a career in research, could be in an academic setting, could be in an R&D setting, could be their own private lab that they're establishing, anything of that sort. If someone is interested in such fundamental research, then yes, it's definitely a good idea to go with pure sciences. And the thing with pure sciences, at least from my perspective, though it's not very popular, is that at least in recent times, pure sciences in physics, chemistry, nanotechnology, in life sciences, they are making such good interdisciplinary progress, which is applicable to a plethora of applications, ranging from aerospace applications to computing applications to agriculture sector. So it's not a bad idea to pursue research in a pure science field, because it prepares you in a fundamental aspect where you can try to use your knowledge and expertise within the fundamental sciences, and tweak them here and there and understand them more to apply to a number of applications.
Okay, so he clarified later on that it was actually just with respect to normal MS, like CSE and Triple and everything of that sort, not pure sciences. But yeah, I guess, yeah, those were actually pretty great insights, even for people who wanted to move towards pure science. So, Kiwi, what about for normal masters as such?
Could you repeat the question? I lost track of it.
The question was there are many master universities out there
Right,
to actually get the master's degree. So how do you
right.
choose the right one?
Oh, okay. See, the idea is very simple here. What we mean by a good institution is an institution where there is a diverse set of people, diverse set of students, faculty, uh, with whom you spend time for 1 or 2 years throughout your coursework or your degree, and you network with these people, and the connections that these people have with the further circles, and the connections that the university can introduce you to the advisor, um, the collaborations that the advisor has. Now, these are things that you want to consider. Uh, it's always a great idea to have a master's degree from one, from one of those that is ranked best for that particular field. But even if not, it's a good idea to look for the slightly lower ranked ones, wherein you feel that a particular track, like a collaboration with an advisor or something of that sort, will pave you better ways.
Okay, and since we had this entire discussion about pure science, I was reminded of another question as well. So, what are your thoughts on the Masters in Engineering, the 1 year program, and the Masters in Management (MIM) programs? What about the other versions of MS which exist? What are your thoughts about their scope, their application, and even how easy or hard it is to get into? Just a general overview of sorts.
In my opinion, most of these programs are meant to train candidates and students for the industry, for the corporate world, or for particular things. Like some of these programs could focus on a product development idea. Some of these could focus on preparing you for business. Some of these could focus on preparing you for entrepreneurship, how you can convert your idea from an idea to a product that is marketable and used by people. It depends on the program, but most of these, I think, are professional programs. Now, why is it a good idea to do these? It depends on the question that you ask to yourself. Why do you want to do this? If you have a certain idea or a certain thought process in mind, and you think this program is going to help you accomplish that in the shortest time possible and in the best way you can imagine, then yes, it definitely helps. But if I were to for a candidate who is not very clear on their interests, uh, and what they want to pursue, if I were to compare one of these professional degrees with a master's degree which involves some sort of thesis work, then I think it's a sound idea to have a master's degree with thesis work, because it gives you exposure to these coursework, to industry work, you also have an internship experience in between, after your first year. So that also gives you a corporate experience, and you also get some research experience. And having all these experiences, you will be in a better position to pick what best interests you and what you want to pursue with further.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah. So I guess that's about it. No other questions are there. A lot of thanks have come.
Oh, it's my
So
pleasure.
any concluding remarks before we end this as such?
Um, well, graduate admissions is a tedious process, but it takes months. Many times you will be frustrated, very true. Uh, but it's a bad idea to make decisions in haste and to go to graduate studies because someone is doing so, or because you think you will just have scopes opened up blindly. I mean, scopes will open up, but you want to think of if it's worth investing so much of money, time, and effort in that. Do you think that much of investment, you will gain much returns on those? Uh, I think another thing is that it's a tedious process for you to actually go through the websites of different universities, different programs, different professors, everyone. But 6 to 8 months of this intensive work can land you in good position, where you are satisfied to yourself, telling I'm doing something that I'm enjoying for myself, and I'm upskilling myself. And I'm also trying to parallelly contribute to the fraternity that I'm working with. So it's a tedious process, but it's totally worth it if you do it genuinely.
Okay, so yeah,
And
I guess.
and one more note I want to make is, it's a very good idea to shoot high, but people should try to apply to a set of universities where they're also putting their favorites, but they also enlist a few backups. Because in the end, like after having said all of these, uh, if a candidate misses out on a certain university or a certain admit because of many reasons that we do not know, that only the committee knows, but it is still not a bad idea to go with one of your backup options, which is not as well known or popular, because surely because you will still be motivated enough for you to pursue the things that you want to, and with that motivation, with that genuine efforts, that will take you a long place.
Okay, so I guess that's about it. Thanks a lot, KV, for this entirely insightful session which we got. We also, from IEEE and ITK, every single member extends gratitude to everyone who's viewing this. So thanks a lot, guys. We will be having more KSS like this, similar to this, and even some which are subject oriented in the weeks to come. So do tune in. Thanks a lot,
Oh,
KV.
Chandran, just a minute, Chandran. I
Yeah.
recently written a, Medium article on this whole idea of graduate admissions, and very detailed perspective. So it might be, if in the interest of audience, to just check that out to get more clarity. And anyone is free, can feel free to contact me anytime, if they want help with reviewing their resume or just any questions and stuff.
Okay, yeah,
Sure.
definitely. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's my
I
pleasure to be here.
guess yeah. Thanks a lot again. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Do tune in for more videos which IEEE will be posting and such live sessions which will be coming in the future. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.